The return of Donald Trump to the White House in 2025 has ushered in a new wave of aggressive immigration policies. These policies target both recent arrivals and those who have built lives in the United States for years. Trump's administration has revived old legal tools and implemented new tactics, creating a climate of fear and uncertainty in immigrant communities. From the streets of Los Angeles to the courthouses of New York, a battle is raging over the future of immigration in America. One of the administration's most controversial moves has been the attempt to revive the Alien Enemies Act. This antiquated law, dating back to 1798, grants the president broad powers to detain and deport non-citizens during times of war. Critics argue that the act is unconstitutional and ripe for abuse, potentially targeting individuals based on their ethnicity or political beliefs rather than legitimate security concerns. The administration argues that the Alien Enemies Act is a necessary tool to combat terrorism and protect national security in an increasingly dangerous world. They point to the ongoing conflict in insert relevant global conflict and the threat posed by transnational criminal organizations as justification for its use. However, human rights groups and legal scholars remain deeply concerned about the potential for abuse and the erosion of due process rights for immigrants. The administration's efforts to dismantle the Temporary Protected Status Program represent another front in its immigration crackdown. TPS provides temporary legal status and work authorization to individuals from designated countries experiencing armed conflict, natural disasters, or other extraordinary conditions. Trump has repeatedly sought to end TPS for several countries, including El Salvador, Haiti, and Honduras, arguing that the program was never intended to provide a path to permanent residency. The Alien Enemies Act of 1798 is a relic of a bygone era, a time when paranoia and xenophobia often dictated government policy. This law, dusted off from the annals of American history, grants the president sweeping powers to detain and deport non-citizens deemed enemy aliens during times of war. The Trump administration's attempt to resurrect this archaic law has sent shockwaves through immigrant communities and ignited a fierce legal battle that could have far-reaching consequences. The administration argues that the Alien Enemies Act is a necessary tool to combat terrorism and protect national security. They point to the ongoing global fight against ISIS and other extremist groups as justification for its use. However, critics argue that the act is unconstitutional and ripe for abuse, potentially targeting individuals based on their ethnicity or political beliefs rather than legitimate security concerns. The vague language of the law, they argue, leaves it open to broad interpretation and potential misuse. The legal challenges to the Alien Enemies Act are multifaceted and complex. Civil liberties groups argue that the law violates the Fifth Amendment's Due Process Clause, which guarantees fair treatment under the law. They contend that the act allows the government to detain and deport individuals without providing them with a meaningful opportunity to challenge their designation as enemy aliens. This, they say, is a fundamental violation of American justice. Moreover, opponents of the Alien Enemies Act argue that it violates the First Amendment's guarantee of freedom of association. They point out that the law could be used to target individuals based on their political affiliations or religious beliefs, effectively suppressing dissent and chilling free speech. The potential for the government to use this law to silence its critics, they warn, is a dangerous precedent that could undermine the very foundations of American democracy. While lawyers and activists wage war in the courts, the human cost of this legal battle is being felt in living rooms and communities across the country. The Trump administration's aggressive immigration policies have created a climate of fear and uncertainty, tearing families apart and leaving many living in the shadows. The emotional toll on individuals, families, and communities is immeasurable. We are living in a constant state of anxiety and fear, says Nicolette Glazer, a lawyer with the American Immigration Council. Every knock on the door, every phone call could be ICE. Families are afraid to go to work, to school, even to the doctor, for fear of being detained or deported. This climate of fear, advocates say, has a chilling effect on civic life, discouraging immigrants from reporting crimes, accessing social services, or exercising their rights. The Trump administration's decision to end TPS for several countries, including El Salvador, Haiti, and Honduras, has thrown the lives of hundreds of thousands of people into turmoil. Many TPS recipients have lived in the United States for decades, building families, businesses, and contributing to their communities. Now they face the agonizing prospect of uprooting their lives and returning to countries they barely know, often facing economic hardship, violence, and persecution. The psychological impact of these policies on children is particularly alarming. Children, especially those who are U.S. citizens, are experiencing high levels of anxiety, depression, and PTSD. These children are living with the constant threat of separation from their parents, says Dr. Amy Cohen, a child psychiatrist and expert on the impact of immigration enforcement on children. This can have devastating and long-lasting consequences for their emotional well-being and development. Section 4. Shifting Sands, Navigating the Courts and Public Opinion. The legal battle over Trump's immigration policies is playing out against a backdrop of shifting political sands. Public opinion on immigration remains deeply divided, with strong views on both sides of the issue. Meanwhile, the courts have emerged as a key battleground, issuing rulings that both uphold and block the administration's actions. In a major setback for the Trump administration, the Supreme Court ruled in Abrego Garcia v. Noem in 2025 that the government must facilitate the return of Kilmar Abrego Garcia, a man who had been deported to El Salvador despite a judge's order barring his removal due to the threat of persecution. The court's decision, while a victory for Mr. Garcia, sent the case back to the lower courts, leaving the broader question of the administration's authority to defy judicial orders unresolved. In another closely watched case, Trump v. Jajic in 2025, the Supreme Court vacated a lower court injunction on the use of the Alien Enemies Act. This decision allows the Trump administration to resume deportations under the act, but with the stipulation that immigrants have due process and can challenge their detention orders. The ruling, hailed as a partial victory by both sides, highlights the complex legal terrain surrounding the administration's immigration policies. Meanwhile, lower courts have issued a mixed bag of rulings on various aspects of Trump's immigration agenda. Some courts have blocked the administration from cutting off legal funds for unaccompanied migrant children, while others have upheld the administration's right to terminate TPS for certain countries. The legal landscape remains fluid and uncertain, with ongoing appeals and challenges likely to continue for years to come. Section 5. The fight continues. Advocacy in the face of uncertainty. Despite the challenges and setbacks, immigrant rights advocates remain resolute in their fight for justice. They continue to challenge the Trump administration's policies in court, organize protests and demonstrations, and provide legal and social services to immigrant communities. The fight for a more humane and just immigration system is far from over. We are exhausted, but we are not giving up, says Cecilia Gonzalez Herrera, an organizer with Movimiento Cosecha, a national immigrant rights group. We know that the fight for immigrant rights is a marathon, not a sprint. We are in this for the long haul. The legal battles over Trump's immigration policies are likely to continue for years to come, with significant implications for the lives of millions of people. The outcome of these battles will shape the future of immigration in America, determining whether the country will uphold its values of fairness, due process, and compassion, or succumb to the politics of fear and division. The fight for a more just and humane immigration system is a fight for the soul of America.